So welcome everyone to this webinar about demand and supply planning in project-driven industries. For today's webinar, I have the pleasure to welcome Guilherme and Georgie here with us today. Sabitavo unfortunately could not join due to sickness, but Guilherme and Georgie will be able to give a lot of interesting insights and also to answer any kind of questions that anybody might have. Now, before we start, the webinar is recorded. So in case you need to leave, it's not a big problem, except for the Q&A part, because of course you can't ask any questions in that case, but you will receive the recording afterwards in any case. So first, I would like to touch on the key topics for today. What are we going to discuss? For the first part, we will focus on demand planning within volatile and project-driven markets. Both Guilherme and Georgie have extensive experience in this, so can share a few examples in there as well. Then we will move more to supply planning, specifics to these kind of industries. And then we will end with the theme of digitalization. Of course, the topic of AI has to be treated in some way in here as well, but also how do you start from Excel and how do you set up an extensive and structured process of IBP within an organization. Then in the end, we will still answer any remaining questions that anybody might have. If there are any questions, you can put them in the Q&A section during the webinar as well, and I will direct them to the panelists if they are relevant at that moment. So before we go into the actual panel discussion, I would briefly like to introduce our panelists. So first, Guilherme Pereira. Guilherme has extensive experience across different companies. Most recently, he was working at Knauf, which is in the gypsum business, so very project-driven. Recently, he moved to Ingredient, which is a different kind of company, but we will focus on the previous experiences of Guilherme. So thank you, Guilherme, for being here and welcome to this webinar. Then secondly, we have Georgie. Georgie has a lot of experience at Rack Ceramics. As you can understand, it's in ceramics business. He's a general manager there and heavily involved in the supply chain side as well. So thank you, Georgie, for being here with us and welcome to this webinar. Now, myself and Ben, co-founder of Horizon Solutions, I will be moderating this panel discussion. So I will be redirecting any questions. And if we go off topic, I will try to steer it back to the right topic, essentially. So with that introduction aside, I would like to move on and start the actual panel discussion in which we will cover these topics one by one. We will always show which topics we are discussing in case anybody gets lost in the conversation, basically. So let's start with the topic of demand planning in volatile and project-driven markets. I would like to start with you, Guilherme, to understand a bit from your experience in gypsum and building materials industries, which are heavily influenced by subsidies, interest rates, and construction cycles. How do you use these kind of signals, if at all, in your demand planning process? Because there's quite a lot of information. So how can one start to structure that and use that?
Yeah, so we used to use a lot of factors, so casual factors we used to say. So as you mentioned, so interest rate and different metrics as well. So for example, especially when the COVID hit, it was a lot of incentives from the government. So that's something that we have to take in consideration. So currently we are having a third-party company that it was providing some data for us, that it was showing, okay, the interest rate and how it was affecting the overall demand based on these hikes, I'd say. So I would say today it's quite of data-driven process. So based on this, I would say we used to have 50, 60 casual factors. Based on that, we are going to drive higher demand, especially also taking in consideration the seasonality. So there are a lot of casual factors that can affect the demand planning cycles. And it's something that we have to deal with, right? Especially in this sort of industry. So yeah, kind of tricky, but with the right data, we can drive the correct demand, correct demand planning forecast. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the part where you get the data from a third party, you say, and then probably using an advanced tool to be able to ingest all of that data and do all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, correct. So based on the data, we can do a lot of, I would say, playing around with the data and do some simulations to see how it fits with our current output as well, because we have to take in consideration that it's not just about the signal, but also our capacity. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations, maybe for people regarding third-party data sources, basically, whether it's providers or whether it's indicators that they can find online? Do you have some recommendations for people who might want to do that for their own business?
Yeah, a lot of the indicators, it's public available. So, for example, the interest rates and also some Fed news from the US, it's also important, and it's also impacting depending on the market that we're looking at. So for the US, it's heavily based on the Fed news and how the dollar is also performing. So it's all public data. Then we have some more, I would say, specific metrics and data that it's more for specific countries. So Italy, for example, we have a lot of incentives from the government coming from there. So it's also something that it's not public available. So normally you have to go through these third-party companies to get, I'd say, the most reliable data from them.
Okay. Is this something, Georgie, from your side, where you're also pulling in this kind of information, or is that only in a future stage that will be happening at RAP?
Yeah, this kind of industry definitely, depend on the various trade barriers, the incentives the government provides, so the forecasting, demand forecasting heavily depend on those things basically for in our industry basically. In terms, we are serving the construction industry, so definitely the interest rate, the other incentives the government is providing all make a big contribution to the demand planning activity. In a long-term perspective, I'm talking. In a short-term perspective, this will be, much more not that much relevant. In a long-term perspective, these are so relevant. And when we talk about the capacity planning and everything, this is very important for us to understand which market we can go and make enough revenue and enough profits that is required for the company. So it's very important, basically, for our industry, which is heavily dependent on the construction sector of every country. Yeah.
Okay. To what extent is it also that you have seasonality and regional variations within your business? Is that also there?
Yeah, definitely. The seasonality makes seasonals also come into play. Actually, when you talk about the short-term planning, for example, if you talk about the European countries, they make a lot of renovations during the summer, or in the Americas also this happens actually. So what is required for during the summer, we have to accordingly we have to plan, and also if you talk about our GCC countries, wherein the Ramadan, the season of Ramadan will have some type of influence in the demand, wherein people are fasting. So there will be a different type of demand that is happening during that period of time. So seasonality also plays an important role in the short-term planning. And, when you talk about long-term planning, the capacity should be aligned based on that one. That's very important. Yeah.
Okay, clear. From your side, Guilherme, regarding seasonality, regarding variations, is that something that you just capture from historical patterns, or is there anything else that people and businesses can do to capture that correctly?
Yes, historical patterns, it's I would say the most used indicator, but also it's some more experience as well. So for example, we know that for the southern part of Europe, we have a really low demand during the summertime. So and especially also for the Asia market, it's the Chinese New Year. So there are some I would say key holidays and that we take in consideration for when we are doing the demand forecasting as well. So as Georgie mentioned, it's also important to mention that this is for the short term, right? So for the long term, that has to be aligned with the seasonalities as well.
Right. Yeah, because there might be some difference in when exactly that holiday or something falls during the year, but it's approximately the same period. So then you consider it as seasonality.
Exactly.
But then if you do that for the short term and you want to isolate that effect, then you do that from a data science perspective, or how do you treat that uplift or dip that you might have?
We try to do the data science part like strictly stick to that, and then we see the numbers that it's going to be the output from it, right? And then we do our, I would say, manual checks to see if everything is aligned to the bigger plan, I would say.
Okay. Okay, it's very clear. I think another important topic in project-driven markets and in construction in general is there's a lot of different variants of products. So Georgie, also from in your business, how do you deal with that? With that complexity? Can you maybe share something around that complexity, like how many SKUs there are, for instance, and how do you begin to plan for that?
Yeah, look, it depends on the markets and how many markets you serve. If you're going to global markets, we are dealing with the ties. It's a lifestyle actually. We call it as a lifestyle. The preference that you select is not my preference, and everybody will be having their own preference in color, designs, and everything. So that increases the SKU complexity. Now, how to deal with is the major question, actually. In coming to the manufacturing, you cannot have the n number of SKUs wherein to manage basically. So the complexity is there, but what we do is that we try to select, if one SKU is selected, we try to maximize the markets that could be interesting of it. So basically, if it is only one market is interested in one SKU, we try to, play with something, something different, propose something different to them to ensure that at least 2 or 3 markets are interested in one product. When you talk about colors, actually, okay, everybody likes beige color, white color, gray color. These are the patterns that you see. Then you go for the design variants, actually. So we try to minimize by ensuring the same product is marketed across different markets, so that the complexity reduces. But if you open up, the sales guys always want their own, whatever they want, they always ask basically, okay, I want this, I want the design and all. But it's a matter of how we filter out, actually. If you give the right value addition to the sales guys, okay, I think from my experience, they do accept it, actually, to ensure that okay, the company moves in the right direction with less number of SKUs. And when you go to the further short-term planning and all, we try to club the SKUs into SKU families and everything, which reduces the complexity in the planning purpose. For example, if you look at your floor today, you will see different sizes of tiles put, like 60 by 60 tiles, so 60 centimeter to 60 centimeter tile, or 120 centimeter to 120 centimeter tiles. So the production is aligned basically based on those parameters. Maybe the designs perspective, can be decided at the end of the production cycle. So the complexity is managed based on the way that we market and the way that we put across to the production line, how much granularity we can bring for managing the production as well as the marketing activity. So we have different variants, different for each design, different colors will be available. We're talking about missing data. This is the system. I personally manage the master data, and we have recreated the whole master data to ensure the whole company is aligned with certain parameters. So when we make some SKU today, we do have certain parameters to follow, actually, how we define the SKU, the item code or whatever we call, actually. So that ensured actually the complete data availability. So the master data is very important. So the marketing is very important here. The production is very important, and the system perspective. So somebody who can manage all this thing definitely will come across a solution. That's what my experience that does, actually, to raise the complexity in SKUs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the point on pushing back on that proliferation of SKUs across different markets, I think that's a very important one indeed. from your side, Guilherme, or do you see that any different experiences or similar?
Yeah, we had a lot of problems with these variants. So depending on the country, we used to have like even within the same country, we would have like different variants just because of the size of the package. So when you are trying to forecast such items, I think it's the next topic, but it's also related because when you're trying to do the forecasting the lowest level and you have such, I would say, messy data, it's kind of tricky. So that's why I'm a big I have a big opinion about like trying to forecast in the lowest level. To me, it's always really tricky, especially when you don't have a reliable master data, like Georgie said. So in the end, it's always coming to the correct master data that you have in your system, right? So I can give an example. So in Knauf, we are trying to, optimize the age inventory, so try to use some SKUs from different countries and shipping to a different one. But it's always really tricky because you have a completely different SKU number, you have some different packaging, and then the customer doesn't want to have this specific size of the package, even though it's the same materials, the same raw material. So it's always trying to balance, having the customer happy and having a reliable demand planning forecast. So yeah, it's quite tricky, I would say. Even with the same region. So for example, in Europe, we have different aspects and different products within the same region. So yeah, it's always trying to balance this to have the customer happy and also having a good demand forecast accuracy.
Yeah, I think indeed, like
I
you
do have
mentioned, the
one
different
point, but
levels. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have one point to about the variance actually. Variance normally comes into play when different packing is required for the same SKU, correct or not? So for me, my experience is like that. We don't. The variants are managed based on the packing basically. So we started defining different packing codes basically. So that is standard across different variants. For example, for our tiles industry, we have somebody will ask for or 7 pieces per pack or 10 pieces per pack, but we manage it through different pack codes. We call different pack codes. So that we don't forecast for the variants. We forecast for the SKU basically.
Yes.
The at the end of the packing line, if this can be managed, I don't know about other industry. If at the end of the production, packing can be managed easily. So I believe a different way of managing it through the pack codes will definitely help to minimize the complexity of that SKUs. Yeah.
I think the tricky part is when you start wrong, like with the master data. So you don't do this since the beginning. Then to try to to put everyone on the same page, it's really tricky. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Okay. So if I would try to summarize this last part on the right planning level, is it correct to say that for some time upfront, for let's say months upfront, and for the buying of your raw materials, you don't do this at the variant level, you do this at the higher level, because then you can produce your products, whether it's a tile, whether it's a plaster, you can do that in bulk. But then when the time comes to actually fulfill those orders, that's when you then have to differentiate the last step to what is the exact size, what is the exact package, and that's where you will do the final step basically. Is that correct for how you both see it, or?
Yep. Yeah. Based on my experience, we would do like we have like the product hierarchy, right? So depending on the level of the product hierarchy, you get more, I would say, accurate or not, and based on that, you do your forecast. So yeah.
Okay, clear. I think some people in these industries who might not be familiar with it yet, it's useful to get that framework as to where to start, depending on what the objective is, right, for the last level of production or for the actual buying of materials way up front. So, but that's very clear. Okay, I think then those are some insights on the demand planning side. So now I would like to move more to the supply planning side, because there's quite some complexity in these industries on on that end, of course. So the first point is more on the production and lead times, which, as far as I understand it, are relatively long within these kind of industries. So how do you see it if we talk about comparing the demand planning side, so getting a good forecast versus being able to hear reduce lead times in your own supply chain, or being very flexible in your business on that? How do you see that, Georgie, from your perspective? How important is it to try and work on these things?
Yeah, the long production, it has to be actually clubbed with the second point. What we do is that what we have done, in my experience, what we have done, we have segregated the products into MTO and MTS basically. And in normal cases, we tend to go for MTS where you have more forecast, less forecast variability, and we try to put those products in MTS scenario. But it is very tricky part actually. What I believe is that if things are moving regularly, definitely the production lead time will be less for that. We have to manage only the transportation lead time. For the domestic market, for example, it's a daily bread and butter. You can produce today and deliver tomorrow. But for export markets, it will take time to reach over there. So we take when we segregate our products into MTO and MTS, this also is considered actually. If it is a long production run, if it is a less demanded product, okay, then definitely there is a long lead time in the production. But we have to serve the market immediately. So definitely we go for a stocking, and accordingly it is managed basically the production lead time and the transportation lead time. When we talk about for customers where 45 days or 60 days is required, we tend to keep some buffer stocks always to ensure there is enough stocks to absorb the variabilities and everything. So accordingly, it is managed to give the right service. It's all service levels. It's all depend on what service levels you want to give. So we always tell to the sales team and the customers, is it an MTS or MTO? And we have segregated these products, and we put in different catalogs accordingly. So each catalog products, each catalog products have different service level. Okay, these catalog products, which is our own, we are obliged to give the service level. Okay, these products you need to wait for production lead time, wherein the production will be much more, lead time will be much more, and accordingly it have to be managed. So basically, all these attributes, the market variability, the demand of each product, and then the segregating into MTO, MTS, and how we market. And the transportation lead time, we club all this activity together, all these functions together, or all these attributes together to manage this complexity of production lead time and the transportation lead time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The splitting of the MTO versus MTS on products is what you do. Is it the same as what you're seeing, Guilherme? Because I've in some cases also seen it done by customers or make exceptions for customers. Is that something that you have seen, Guilherme? Or
I think George, he summarized quite well, because everything it's around the service level, right? So depending on the service level that you have set up, and then you're gonna drive your decisions based on that. So and also the more, I would say, tricky products, you have to set up I would say a correct strategy if you're gonna set up this as MTO or MTS as well. So everything it's around the service level.
So, and that's always on the product level in both of your cases, or have you also seen exceptions for specific customers, or for some products you want to make exceptions for certain customers? Is that something that you've seen as an extra complexity in that, or not in practice?
Yes, depending on the customer, sometimes, yeah.
Actually, if you divide this your total industry or total marketing thing into different channels, is it a project? No, for us, we serve all type of channels in the market basically. Maybe it's a project, it's a contracting company, maybe it's a trader, B2B, direct B2B customers, or retailers also. So based on those parameters also we decide whether it should be MTS or MTO. For a retail customer, for a direct to retail thing, we always go for those SKUs will definitely be in the MTS category to serve the products. So that will help others also. That will help other customers also to come to those products, okay, to propose those products and to make sure that they get the correct service level, and also the inventory levels will be less in that case. If you can drive like that. And when you decide the products, you have to consider all this activity actually. That is the pivot of that one. When you decide the product at the beginning of the year, what is your product line for next 1 year? You need to consider all these things and put across products. Then you will be able to manage the complexity much more efficiently. Yeah.
Okay. It's good one around segmentation also from supply chain, having that structure in place. Let's say it also comes back to that SKU proliferation, like you mentioned, Georgie. I think this is in line with that. You determine up front really which SKUs, which markets. Only if there are several markets will you do it. In this case, also what's the MTS MTO split, service levels attached to it. So I think that's very proactive. Let's say if you don't have that, it becomes very complex. The next point is more on trends that we've seen the last years. I mean, it's going on for more than just last years, but it's about CO2 targets and energy constraints within manufacturing. I want to know if these are truly embedded within planning decisions. Have you seen this being done, Guilherme, in your planning process around capacity or any other constraints that are actually taken into your planning to say, no, we cannot produce this? Is that something that happens?
No. Not really. For example, in Knauf we have the Knauf recycling. So we take the used gypsum, so gypsum that it's not going to be used anymore, and recycle that, and we transform that into a new and different products as well. But not specifically, I would say, impacting or forecasts at all.
Okay. And on the supply planning side, regarding how much you are able to produce within a factory during a certain period, for instance, because of emissions, is that something that has to be taken into consideration, regardless of whether the factory could produce more?
It depends on the country, right? So if we're talking about some plants in countries that does not take this matter really, I would say, serious, so it doesn't matter. But for Europe, yeah, for sure, we have already that set up as a capacity, and also in the period that you can produce more or less.
Okay, so it is really something that is being taken into consideration.
Yeah. Okay. But it's more, let's say, regional based decision.
Okay. Yeah,
or country based. Yeah.
Same in your perspective, Georgie?
Yeah, definitely. In the current world, these are something which have to be taken care of.
Regarding products specifically, is there something there?
Specifically for the products, actually, the recycling have to be efficient. Whether I think every industry will have some residues of the finished goods or any semi-finished goods also after the production or after the sales. If we can successfully effectively recycle those residues, it makes a big important thing in the sustainability factors actually. So our industry, we recycle our products. We recycle everything whatever possible in the whole production cycle. And in the planning perspective, in the day-to-day demand planning perspective, this may not come other than the logistics planning actually, where we try to improve our efficiency in terms of the material load that goes in each trailer or container, whatever we do for the logistics. We try to ensure that the maximum load is sent across by designing the pallet correctly, by designing the product boxes correctly and everything. So these are different type of planning which normally we don't do it in a day-to-day activity, but it's in a long-term perspective. It's always when we talk about these sustainability factors, we consider those things basically. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned indeed there was the logistics of it and transports. This relates to this last point here, which is about capacity across different locations. From where do you fulfill demands? If there is demand in one location, can you still shift the inventory from another location? So it's more at a network level that planning can be done. This cannot be done in all companies, right? In pharma, for instance, it's quite difficult. If you have specific products in a region with labels in that country, they are very specific. You cannot just shift them to another country. So I think in both of your cases, it's different, right? You can actually plan at the network level. Is that something that is being done at that kind of level, only for the long term? How do you set that up, basically?
In the long-term perspective, it is not that much important. The short-term perspective, it is very important, basically. The something which is we are supplying in to Europe, the same labels will not be applied in America, basically. So definitely there will be changes in the cartoons or the packing or whatever. The products may be the same, simply packing. So it's a tricky part actually how to manage it, but we efficiently manage it. Again, I will come to the same MTO MTS concept. There is a tricky part. Which have to go to MTO and MTS. And some products which the customer have very specifics, it will go to MTO strategy, basically. So accordingly, the production is balanced. The transfers on the inventory is also managed according to that one. For example, for Europe, it will take 45 days. So if you're serving multiple type of customers, like retail customers or project customers, you cannot go with MTO always. You should have some MTS so that the whole cycle is managed properly. So in that case, we need to manage what is there in the stock in our warehouses in different parts of the world, and also what is in the transit and what is in the ground in the headquarters and everything. So it's very major, something very important to be managed, but we do it with very, the cost of ownership is very important here. Who tells what and what to be told? It is actually given to different set of people to manage those things actually. So a person who is managing what is there in the transit, he manages that one. So he's given a target. Okay, this should be what is in the target. What is to be in the transit basically, and what is in the ground, some other person will be managing. So we put the cost of ownership for those people, and this will effectively managed according to that one. So I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
From your perspective, Guilherme, because you were at the global level also, so then it's also you have the bigger picture, right? Not just fulfilling or doing the planning for one country. So that's also a network level that you then looked at it. Did you have to do any of those exercises?
Yeah, it's quite important. We also take more in consideration the data science part, but of course, the network, I would say optimization, it's key, right? So I have seen more and more companies taking a look into this area and trying to balance even more, because the inventory, it's something that it's the capital spent already, right? So you have to be, I would say. Really, I would say innovative to try to balance this inventory. So for example, let's say that we have some age inventory sitting across the globe, and why are we going to produce that more? So you have to take in consideration the logistics that you're going to be transferring this stock to another location, also looking if the customer requirements are going to be fulfilled. But if all of this, it's I would say a check mark and everything, it's okay. So should not be a problem to just balance that and transfer one stock from one location to another. So also one strategy that we did, not for Knauf but for GE, we used to have a lot of age inventory, and we were sitting across the globe. So we took the most, I would say, the most expensive ones, and we create 2 DC locations. So one in Dubai and another one in Rotterdam. And then we used to ship all of these age inventories to these 2 locations. And once one of the countries or one of the plants needed one of these semi or finished goods, we would just transfer the stock from the DC directly to the plant or to the customer. So with this initiative, we were able to save a lot of money, so almost $10 million. So I would say that's really keen to look at the network and to optimize our network. Yeah.
Okay. But indeed, it comes with quite some complexity and some tools that you need to do that to make all of the calculation and all the construction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, very clear. So I would like to move to the third final topic in this discussion, which is more around digitalization. So from your side, Guilherme, at Knauf before, you are leading IBP and also AI-based planning, right? So I'm curious what improved when moving away from Excel, but also which kind of hurdles were there still, or which kind of things actually became more complex even. So let's say both the good and the bad of moving towards a new technology.
Yeah, I would say the the biggest constraint it's also it's always the human being, right? So someone like the planner is used to do this planning for the past 20 years in his Excel, doing the VLOOKUPs, the formulas, and so on. So it's always about the change management part. How we're gonna make sure that this user is gonna be using the latest software, and then the second part it's the implementation itself, right? So the implementation of such tools, it's never something easy, I would say. So you have to really have a stronger team, but I would say the top one priority is to have the master data in place. So if you have a messy master data, you're gonna have a messy signal in the end. So the most important part is to have the right master data and know exactly what you're gonna be doing with this new tool and where the fields and the attributes are going to be used and how.
Mhm.
So based on that, you can have a really good implementation, and then it's the change management part. So when we move from the Excel to a planning tool, it was really I would say hard to convince the user that his Excel of 20 years old it was not gonna be needed anymore, and he was need to use this new tool with this new process step by step. Most of the times it's gonna be more time consuming in the beginning because he's learning where to click around and how to do the same function that he was doing in Excel, how he can do that in this new tool. But in the end, it's all about data, right? So you can see how the forecast accuracy it was before and after the implementation. So it's a big gain, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So if I look at that, or if I summarize that from my notes, it's like the part on change management, being able to take people in this project,
Yeah.
then also the project governance, of course, and running through that implementation, but then also the basics, the foundations in terms of master data that need to be there. I think from your side, Joji, you are embarking on that journey also, right, towards new tools, to digitalization. Are these also the things that you are thinking of? Are these also your priorities, or do you have other things that you say this is for us going to be the focus? This is something that we cannot overlook.
Yeah, obviously, IBP is something which is very important. I believe in a company where you have, enough that much of the revenue. Smaller company, maybe it's not required. So bigger company, it is absolutely required. What improves, the question is directly, I will tag it to revenue, and the profitability. What is the challenge today? The data will be in silos. Even though if it is managed in the Excel, a centralized demand planner cannot understand each and everything what is happening around the market and what is happening around the company. So there will be a lot of missed chances, wherein we can improve our profitability and
Yeah.
also the revenue factor. The forecast accuracy, which we all know that it will definitely improve. But along with that one, what will give companies that revenue part, we will be able to manage our demand and the supply much more effectively in terms of revenue and then the working capital. Uh, Today, when you go with Excel, either you go with a very statistical mode or collaborative mode. So,
Mhm.
which is the best one? How to understand this thing? It's
Yeah.
very difficult actually. So, the collaboration as well as statistical model can be integrated in one tool will definitely
Mhm.
improve the service level, the forecasting accuracy, and also the revenue and profitability. Uh, you know, but the difficult part is to convince everybody, as Mr. Pereira was telling, the to convince the management the requirement of an IBP, it's tough, and to the users also to convince them, okay, you have to move to a IBP platform. But I believe the value that is brought to the table will be immense in terms of working capital and the revenue and the profitability. Yeah.
So
I think one important point that Georgie just mentioned, it's the visibility that the demand and supply is gonna have. So because before you have in the IBP, it's more silos, exactly what he just mentioned. So once you have this IBP running, it's like I would say one picture, and yeah, I think it's keen for some big industries to have that.
So on that, the visibility is indeed important. You know that there's going to be some bottom line benefits, but how do you build that business case? Do any of you have experience with that? What do you put in there? Is it just a matter of making calculations based on the data, providing that business case, and then making sure it gets priority across other projects? So this is a bit about not just adoption of people, right? But
Mhm.
really about how do you get this through? How do you get this started?
Sure.
Any
And
tips that you have in that regard? Any hints that you have, Guilherme and Georgie, on how do you build that
I'm
business
sorry,
case? How do you show
I
that there's
just
going to
missed.
be, no, it's fine. Just how do you show that there is going to be indeed that P&L impact before you actually start that project, before you start to invest time, resources, people into this? How do you build that up? Some people struggle with that and struggle with getting it through internally. It takes years for them, and they get conversations going, but nothing really happens. How do you deal with that?
No, the thing is that the complexity have to be properly communicated. When you deal with the multiple customers with multiple, way of doing the business. Some are retailers, some are large scale wholesalers, some are project customers, and you need to serve each and every, and then the B2B or OEM customers. When you deal with multiple customers and with multiple service levels that we need to provide, definitely that complexity have to be properly communicated to the management. This is what we need actually. If a retail customer want the material tomorrow, there should be proper forecasting for it. Okay, if a B2B customers want materials on time, it should be integrated with their platform basically, or with their information that they have, basic correct information that they give. You cannot wait for a PO or something like that to manage the whole cycle
So that's
chain
concrete
actually.
cases then, right? That's concrete cases where you say this is what we need, otherwise we cannot do this. But that's like the bigger business case as to what will this then bottom line give to the company. Is that something that you then theoretically build, or how do you work on that?
Yes, it is. Take the working capital. Your working capital will definitely more, and your supplies and the demand, there will be a gap on it actually. Take the working capital, and you can prove it. If you reduce this much of percentage of inventory by improving the forecasting accuracy, you can definitely build the case. And the lost revenues also can be brought in. If you see the CRM data, you will get a lot of data from the CRM. And if you convert that one, what is to be converted to as a sales orders, everything will not be lost because of the price. There could be loss of sale just because of non-compliance with the service, what they want, what the customer wanted. So if you compile the data, the CRM data, the working capital data, and the lead times that we provide, we can definitely build a case to tell that there is a requirement for IBP. Yeah.
Okay, that's looking a lot at the data from your side. Guilherme, do you experiment with something beforehand, or how do you do?
Yeah, normally like define the problem, right? Then you try to quantify the impact that it's gonna have. So the work capital, like George say, tied especially to inventory as well. Then we try to define the IBP solution. So explain how the IBP works and or which tool we are gonna be using with that. And then you try to estimate, I would say, the measurable benefits that it's gonna have. So, like, okay, we're gonna have improvement of 10, 20% in the forecast accuracy, or inventory. It's gonna improve as well by, I don't know, 15, 20%. And then we have to compare also the cost versus the ROI, right? So the software, the implementation, the change management versus the expected savings that we're gonna have. So when you have all of these, I don't know, 4 or 5 casuals, I would say events and analysis that you have to do it, then you build this executive story and then you present that to the senior management leadership.
In terms of that, what is the, if you talk about the cost and then the ROI, what's the kind of typical, let's say, order of magnitude that you see there for $1 invested or for $100,000 invested times X, or do you have something like that you've seen often that's needed?
What do you mean?
So basically the costs and then the return on investment, is it measured in absolute numbers? Is it measured in X times the investment that you get back within this kind of period? How do you see that within companies? Do you see any kind of similarities where they say, okay, we need to see something shortly in terms of times 5 return, or it can also be longer if it's, like you said in the previous project, 10 million that you see that you will get out of it? It's flexible, the actual.
It's a bit tricky to try to measure that. So
Yeah.
normally what we try to always focus it's in these measurable results that we can get. So for example, the improvements in the forecast accuracy, the improvements in the inventory, the manual planning work that we're going to be saving, so the work capital. So we try, at least from my side, we try to do like a measurable stuff rather than trying to combine everything in one bucket and presenting that. So always trying to look for this, I'd say, 3 main measurable points.
Okay, clear. I think one final point I still want to cover here is around AI automation, value versus expectations. If you're now presenting, let's say, a new initiative or business case, to what extent is the company thinking about AI and different tools out there? And to what extent are you also both personally trying out these different tools? Maybe you cannot fully share it because some of these things might be confidential also, right? What kind of tools that you use? But to what extent do you see there being value right now? Not about promises that of what it might be in a few years, right? But really now within the company and both of you personally within your jobs, how do you see that?
Don't you start, Jorge?
Yeah, I think you can start basically. So
yeah. So from my side, I have been quite deep on this topic, and I have been playing around with the latest technologies. So OpenClaw, everything related to agents and so on. So for the enterprise, I would say business case, there are a lot of opportunities. So for example, we are now in a close partnership with Google and developing more AI agents towards the manufacturing sites. So also having some I would say dictionary. So for example, let's say that someone that is sitting in Indonesia, he's having some problems in a manufacturing plant, and someone in Brazil, for example, he had the same problem a long time ago. So we are trying to, because we have the data, right? So most of these companies, they already have the data. So it's just matter on seeing, okay, how we are gonna use this data and putting the right format in order for the AI to read that and translate into a I'd say a correct output. One thing that we have to be really careful about, it's the hallucinations that AI has quite often. So it's a lot of guardrails that we also have to put in place. But there are a lot of business case that we can utilize in our industries. Also, like some decisions and for inventory, we can optimize and automate that as well. A lot of I would say business case that we could use a whole webinar just to discuss that. But I would say the most recent one that I have been working on, it's to have a demand planner AI agent. So you can use, for example, the whole Google Cloud stack. I like to call the tech stack that they have. So you can build a lot of agents from there and connect into your daily life and have that automate a lot of decisions and small manual work that you used to have in our daily basis.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, AI is something which every company is trying to adopt. A lot of business cases for sure coming up. For me, I'm looking in for AI for the collaborative purposes. Actually, if we can successfully collaborate with all the stakeholders, in real time, without much, manual interventions, by understanding the data pattern, by understanding all the data that is available and giving a good, input for the decision making. So that is going to be a good business case, and where I believe we will be adopting first the AI things. Then for sure, it's something which have to be further studied. Even I am also deep diving into the subject, where we can use different agents to manage different things actually. For example, a company in US or Europe will have a different way of a pattern of working. I always ask the customers, okay, your forecast is very bad. Why? You are forecasting this much and you are ordering this much. Something over ordering or not forecast ordering as per the forecast. So basically, it is they will also, the issues that they face also have to be taken care. I think with the AI, those collaborations, I believe if we can bring and show them, okay, this is what you need to forecast. I think the collaborative business case will be something which is, for me, I will take up immediately. And in the long term, we have to see what are the areas that we can implement here. Yeah.
Yeah, one nice business case for that as well. It's when you connect, for example, some process mining tools into some agents, so he can go to the workflow and correct that immediately. He can see like the I would say actionable insights that it's available and fix that. So yeah, I'm really curious to see in the future how we are gonna be working, I would say. Because with all of these agents, we can focus more in the strategic part and let this manual stuff and this time-consuming task that we have to the bot and to the machine to handle that. So yeah.
Okay, it's a great last point, I think, to the discussion on the digitalization. So we still have a couple of minutes for the Q&A part. I see a couple of questions in the chat. One person's also asked multiple questions, so I'll just take one interesting one, which is on the supply planning side regarding capacities. Which capacities are being considered? So is it only your own capacity, or do you also actually consider supplier capacity? I assume the question then also asks if they share data around that, or so to what extent is supplier capacity considered in your own planning? Is the question.
I'm not clear about the question. Can you just repeat?
To what extent is your supplier capacity, so your different suppliers, their capacity, to what extent is that incorporated in your own planning?
Okay, you're talking about raw materials then, right?
Yes,
correct?
Indeed.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a capacity to run. In the long-term perspective, we decide what is the volume that we want actually. And accordingly, the vendors are selected. If multiple vendors are required, definitely there are multiple vendors to supply the enough raw materials.
That's in the initial part, right? But then once you
Yeah.
work with them, do you share your forecast, for instance, with them way up front so that they can also
Absolutely
plan for
right.
it?
We share what is the yearly forecast that we have to our purchasing team. They then change or modify according to the raw material suppliers. They will modify those forecasts for them. That's what happening. But our products are basically it's a volume product, and wherein for the raw materials could be same for different products actually. If you see the whole capacity and check the raw materials required for that one, there will be a pattern for it, right? It's a volume producer basically, and accordingly the vendors are selected. So in a day-to-day demand planning activity, we are not much bothered of this thing, because it's a long-term planning. So what you need basically, what you need basically to run the plant, accordingly it is. There are special raw materials wherein special colors or special something very special, wherein we go with the detailed planning. We check what is the demand, and accordingly it is transferred to the purchasing team, where they will manage the further forecasting to the vendors. Yeah.
Okay, clear. From another question is regarding product lifecycle management. So Guilherme, to what extent are there any metrics? I mean, Georgie focused on it earlier, but I want to know if you have any metrics in the company around product lifecycle management from a planning perspective, right? On make sure it doesn't proliferate or things like this, or does this completely sit in a different department, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's set in a different department, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I would also think. Okay. Then another question relates to the initial part on the third-party data providers. If you have any specific recommendations, because there's a lot of noise in public data as well. That's a question. So I don't know if there's any specifics.
I don't remember on the top of my head, but I can definitely share some sources and the ones that I would be using definitely, and that I trust. So even these third-party companies, normally the price it's not that expensive. So I will share the names as well later on with you. We can just reply to this person. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Then one more question on the tools that are being used. You mentioned OpenClaw, you mentioned Google. Which other tools do you use on a daily basis in terms of LLMs or any other AI tools? To both of you.
It depends. So, for example, we are using the Google stack. So mainly Gemini and Vertex and the other tools from Google. In other roles, used to have Llama from Meta to build our own reasonings. So yeah, it really depends on the company that you work for and the tech available for you. So
what's allowed basically is the important part here.
I would say most of the companies are they're running on the Microsoft tech stack. So basically, you're stuck with the Copilot, and depending on the company, you can also have the Azure OpenAI API enabled to you. So it really depends on the company that you are working for. So even I'd say some companies, they even have like some contracts with OpenAI and with Google. So depending on the use case, you're gonna choose one to another. But I'm a big fan of Google, so I'd say they have the completely tech stack that you can be using. So if I have to choose one, regardless the company policy, I would go with Google.
Okay. From your end, Georgie, is that something different that your IT is allowing, let's say?
No, we are into Microsoft Copilot, which they give the full access on it to.
Okay.
We are working on the subjects, to create agents and everything. So we are actually I can tell we are in the initial stages of those adoption. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, clear. I see a couple of more questions that are related to demand, but we discussed some of these. So if there are still any questions, we can still take them up after the webinar. But with that, I would like to conclude the webinar, and I would like to thank both of you, Guilherme and Georgie, for sharing all of your insights. We will put the recording online so people can still watch it. We'll also make a summary of it, and then any kind of resources that you would still have or still want to share, we will also put those in there. So thank you very much, Guilherme, Georgie, and attendees, and I wish you all still a good day or good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Ben.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.